Okay, we are live. We are on the laptop on my desk, not my usual webcam and GoPro or whatever. Um, this seems to work just fine, so it's easier for me. I figure why the fuck not? So, topic for today is basically value for money and where it matters, why spending too much on something doesn't necessarily matter. Spending too little can be a problem. Um, and just prioritizing it because I think a lot of people get wrapped up in the cool and don't really focus on the what is my intended purpose? What am I using this for? What matters? And and what does that really cost? Because you can spend unlimited amounts of money. I mean, you can go into the tens of thousands of dollars building an AR. You can get optics that are $10,000. But if that optic doesn't match your intended role, it was wasted. But conversely, if you spend $50 on a cheap optic from Amazon that doesn't hold zero and batteries die and it battery door falls off while you're using it and it fails, you threw $50 away. You didn't get any value for your money. So there's this point where you have to spend enough that it works and accomplishes the intended role. And then after that, you can enhance the experience, you can improve results, usually within a pretty good window by spending more money. But then it tapers off and you get diminishing returns. And this is a common thing with any material item. As you get from normal, mainstream, common level items to the premium, the exotic, the specialized, you're paying a great deal more for only slightly more actual value in normal sense. For example, it may be slightly more durable, it may be slightly more precise, it may be slightly more optically clear in the case of an optic. Sorry, I just finished dinner and I'm still clearing it out of my mouth, so to speak. This is particularly true with triggers, rail systems, barrels, and optics, because these are all things where spending more money can have a real result. You can have a lighter rail system that is more rigid, more solid. You can have a trigger that is a little faster, a little crisper, a little better reset, and so on. You can have an optic that is better field of view, better magnification range, more optical clarity, better resolution. Resolution's a thing on optics. That isn't a screen thing. That came later. Resolution is literally if you put up a card with closely spaced lines at a known distance, how tightly packed can those lines be? How many lines per inch can the optic resolve? That's literally what it means. And better optics resolve more lines. That's simple. But if your intended role is inside 100 yards, self-defense, home defense, engaging larger targets, meaning people and large animals, do you need super resolution, or is good enough good enough? Is spending 3 or 4 times more money to get slightly more optical clarity worthwhile, or would you have been better served by spending that $1,000, $2,000 on ammunition and practicing? Unless your job is to shoot very small targets at 3, 4, 500 yards or further, but we're talking ARs here, so let's keep the range relatively reasonable for actually engaging targets as opposed to paper. I'm questioning the value. It doesn't mean it's not nice. I'm not saying that if you can throw the money at it, there's no return. I'm just saying you went from every $100 got you a noticeable improvement to now you had to double your money to see a real difference. The difference between a good $500 or $600 optic, and we're talking low magnification here. We're talking, you know, sub 15x, say, the 1 to 8s, the 1 to 10s, the 1 to 6s, a 3x prism, a 2x prism, a red dot, um, anything like that. If you go from a $500 version to a $1,000 version, most of what you get is a little, hopefully, increase in durability, a little increase in optical clarity, small, but there, and usually a name, because you went from, say, a primary arms or a vortex to Trigicon, to um, Loophole, or somebody in that category. And I question how valid that name is. Oh, I've got a freaking itch. There we go. Because in this day and age, Vortex makes really good optics. Primary Arms, some of their stuff is at least as good as anything else in the price category, or significantly higher. Now, that is not to say that my $360 Primary Arms 2X gold line is the equivalent of a ACOG, but in some ways it's better. The ACOG has, for many ways, been frozen in time because of government contracts. It's not that they couldn't do better. It's not that they don't have any interest in that, but they don't need to improve it because they have a government contract that says we're going to buy this in these quantities exactly like this. Don't change it. And if they go to change it, now they've got to reconvince the military to switch items. And why would they? If they found ways to make that cheaper, it's just more profit for them. So is my 2X from Primary Arms as durable? No. I mean, the ACOGs are legendary for durability. Nobody is saying they're as durable. But is it durable enough for the intended role? Yeah. I mean, that was the idea. That has been the result. I have not really abused mine personally, but people have, and they have held up. The optical clarity, is it as good as an ACOG? Well, pick your ACOG. I've seen ACOGs that were not outstanding. They're good. They're not outstanding. That 2X, pretty damn good. My eye relief is better than most ACOGs. It's more forgiving. I have more room, and it's more forgiving. My field of view, excellent. Again, depends on the ACOG. There's a wide variety, right? But for the intended role, those are two competing options. One is 2 or 3 times the money, even 4 times the money, depending on which model you pick. But on the other hand, you could spend $75 or $150 on a similar item and think you were doing just fine. This is going to be good enough, right? And the problem is, if it's not good enough, you have thrown away the money. So if you had just saved up more or committed more, you would not have to re-spend the money. Because remember, if you re-spend the money and you only spend the same amount you did originally, so you've doubled your cost now, you're still back with the product that failed. So if you spend more to get a product that you now have more confidence in, say you went from a cheaper option to the 2X or to an ACOG. I'll just keep using that as the 2 examples, okay? Pick, this could be Aimpoint and some other brand. This could be whatever, pick your choice. So you go from the Tasco or whatever China Mart thing, and you spent $100, $150, fails. Then you go to the 2X or the ACOG. Well, now you spent that ACOG money or 2X money plus the $150. It was more expensive now than if you had just committed from the start. On the other hand, there are items where I don't think it matters in the slightest. I've got a little list here. Magazines. There are a wide variety of magazines available for the AR-15 or several other platforms. As long as you don't go with some weird off-brand junk, they work. I mean, you can argue on the internet all day long about this or that, but for the most part, any of the mainstream magazines work. If you buy a quality aluminum magazine, a quality PMag, a quality Lancer, they just work. Whatever, you know. I don't care if it's a Brownell's house brand, a C Products, an old OK, PMag, HexMag, like whatever. They work. And if they don't, how much have you committed? Unless you bought, 100 magazines, okay, you bought a couple, they failed, you had a problem with them, you're out a few bucks. Magazines fail anyway. They wear out, they die, they get broken. Magazines are not a lifetime purchase. Rifle cases. If you cheap out on your first rifle case and you spend $30, it's probably not going to fail in the first trip or two. If it lasts you 6 months or a year, money okay spent. No big deal, right? Now, I'm not saying go buy the cheapest case you can find. I want something with decent material, decent foam, decent stitching. But it doesn't have to be uber tactical LaRue. It doesn't have to have the latest and greatest brand stenciled on it. Whatever. Slings. I like the Magpul MS4s. These are a mainstream, relatively inexpensive sling. Are they as good as a fully set up Haley Strategic or a Blue Force Gear or a Vickers? Or maybe. Depends on what you're doing with it. But for everything I'm doing, the $60 option is more than good enough. It's not going to fail me. I'm not going to have a moment where I go, I wish I had spent twice as much money. Now, that doesn't mean that the more expensive ones don't have things that I might value, but they aren't worth the money to me. If it's worth more to you, if spending that extra money is not an issue for you, go for it. But now you're into the diminishing returns. You have something that's good enough at a lower price point. It gets the job done. And you're choosing to spend more money because it's nicer. And it could be, in some cases, just a nicer name. Bragging rights with your buddies. That's a thing. I'm not making fun of it. That's literally a thing. If you're doing a general purpose AR, this is something you're going to use for home defense, plinking at the range, no distance work, no precision work, and you're really not worried about minute of angle accuracy. If it's 1.5, 2 minute angle, you're mostly going to shoot mil-spec ammo, whatever. You don't care. It just has to work. Buy whatever brand barrel you want. If you're building an AR or you're upgrading to do a shorter barrel or a longer barrel or a different profile, as long as it cycles, as long as you have a good chamber cut, as long as you've got the right gas port, concentric cuts for your threading, so that if you put a muzzle brake that is a tight fit, it's in line. If you put a suppressor, it's fine. Whatever. That's a spot you can spend money on if it meets your needs. You can spend $3,000 on a barrel for an AR if that is important. Is it important for everybody on every AR? No. And I think that's key. You have to know what your priorities are. And by the way, folks, if anybody is actually watching, it says 0, but it often says 0 and there's somebody there. Feel free to comment, ask questions. This is meant to be interactive. I just never have anybody actually watching. You have to match the intended function. So I have one of my ARs behind me. It is my general purpose setup. It is not my SBR. It actually is the SBR lower, but it's not the SBR setup. It's the lightweight, what would Stoner do, upper on my old SBR lower. And that, to me, that is my generic mix. It is a general purpose lower with a very light but not extreme upper. I don't have a light and bolt carrier group. I don't have a rail that is compromised in terms of its integrity in order to save weight. Not saying that what would Stoner do one is compromised. I'm just saying I didn't choose the absolute lightest. I chose something I had confidence in that was on the lighter side. It's not, I didn't pick an upper receiver based on lightweight. There's some that are like half an ounce lighter or something. My stock is a relatively heavy Volta or EMOD. It has a chunk of steel in the back of it, like on the butt. It is not light, but it balances the carbine well. To me, you evaluate your needs and you pick parts. And that setup's a great example. There's nothing on that rifle that is high end. The fanciest thing on that rifle is the trigger, and it's a $87 LaRue MBT2. Not super fancy, very high quality, great value, but not fancy. The rail system is the Odinworks. It's, not particularly expensive, not super cheap, but nothing crazy. It is not my best rail system. It's not my worst rail system. It just works. The barrel is a Faxon pencil barrel. Faxon, it makes quality barrels, but they're not, anything crazy expensive. They're a mainstream company. The lower receiver, Smith & Wesson. It's an MP15. That's the core of that rifle. The bolt, I actually don't remember which bolt is in there. That's the American Defense one. I've done a video on that bolt. It is nitrided. It is the American Defense one. Has been very reliable for me. It just didn't like my 300 subsonics. They were really mild. It just wasn't that perfect. The only bolt I've got that really likes those is I've got two. I've got my original Smith & Wesson bolt, and I've got my Bravo Company one. Both of those cycle those rounds 99% of the time. Nothing's 100% with those. They are sub-marginal. If you're looking at what is the required gas to reliably cycle, they are under that limit. But on the other hand, they were the quietest round I could make for fun. They're purely for fun. They are not meant to be a defensive round. They are not meant to be a hunting round. They are literally an experiment in how quiet can I get to function most of the time in that setup, my SBR setup. And there were times where I would literally close the gas port, and it was just how quiet can I make it? It's not going to cycle at all. That was the intended original setup for those. So I don't consider them a test of the bolt carrier group. I don't think that's fair. But that brings me to the next point. If you're going to spend money, where should you spend the money? Where is, where to put the budget if you are building one or you're upgrading something? If you have an otherwise 100% reliable AR, meaning any failures, you can pin them down, there was something wrong, defective ammo, it got too dirty, something was off. Like, it wasn't the gun's fault. You're not replacing parts that fix this. And usually that comes down to bad ammo or dirt. Something got in there and interfered with reliable function. The number one places I would go would be the bolt, the bolt carrier group. Um, Not so much that you need to if you've already got a reliable rifle, but I would buy a spare. That would be a key thing. I would have a reliable, good quality spare. A better optic. I think that financially on guns, optics are always a good investment. Quality optics are quality optics. They're always quality optics. They don't get worse. Now, over decades, over multiple decades, how good an optic you can get at what price point can come down. But what I see is that the optical quality may filter down to lesser pricing range, lower price brackets, but not a lot. And the build quality of the whole optic tends to not filter down as well. So, like the overall build quality of, say, a Leupold at a particular price point stays. Just because the optical quality has trickled down to the next tier down doesn't mean the construction quality of the whole thing did. So if you want a really well-made scope, that's going to cost a certain amount. And I don't think that you're going to go, 10 years later and go, well, damn, I could have, if I bought this one, it would have been cheaper. That tends to be a brand thing. Vortex will be cheaper for a given quality level than Leupold. In general, I'm not going to get into that fight, but just usually, a Viper or even a low-end Razor is going to be better than the equivalently priced Leupold, Nikon, Bushnell, whoever. Not everybody, but as a normal thing. The Razors can compete at very high levels, both for build quality and optical clarity, well under those competitors in price point. That's a Vortex thing, and they stand behind it. They stand behind their product. Is it quite as perfect in every way as the twice as expensive Swarovski? Maybe not. But does any of that really matter? Like, what did you get for that money that mattered to you? The primary arm stuff, I mean, I harp on them a lot, but I'm a big fan because dollar value is there. If you spend $200, you get one of the best $200 optics available. If you spend $300, it's one of the best $300. If you spend $500, so on and so forth. What you don't get is always the style. A $500 or $600 Vortex has some flair to it. It's got some elegance and refinement in the visual appearance and the machining. The primary arms one probably won't. My 2.5 to 10 primary arms gold line, when you put it next to the equivalent Vortex, looks crude. But then you look through it and you're like, oh, yeah, that's at least as good. Oh, hiccups. The reticle is better. And it was $200 cheaper, $100 cheaper. You can't really argue that. Durability, on par, right? I mean, neither of those was meant to be a super tough, impossible to break scope. They weren't the military style stuff. And this goes across the board. If you spend a certain price point, and as long as you get quality, look for the values. If that's what you want. If you're willing to spend more on style, do it. Yeah, I'm not saying not to, but if it's something where you don't care about that, why bother? For example, buffers, literally the buffer that goes in the buffer tube that helps the action cycle properly. You can spend $15 or you can spend $50 or you can spend $150. I would do the $15 or the $150 because the $150 one has adjustable weights, a silent spring system, a captured spring. It's the JP Systems one. That has value. that you are spending real money on a significant improvement in the system. Now, you may or may not care about that improvement. That might be something you don't need. But if you're interested in that, if that has value to you at all, that's worth the money. The more expensive standard style buffers don't do anything that the cheap one didn't do. Now, I'm not saying to buy the cheapo brand that people keep reporting falls apart. If there's a bunch of reviews saying that, after a few shot cycles, it literally came apart, don't buy that one. Don't get that one. But there are a number of brands available where it's still at a lower price point and it holds up. I have a Spikes STT2. I like it. It's great. Doesn't do anything any other similarly weighted buffer would do. And it probably cost me twice as much. Live and learn. I got it. My buddy got one. We both like them. We both had good luck with them. But they're just a heavier buffer. I mean, you can get any other buffer in the same weight range. There's nothing special there. And I mean, let's face it, after a few thousand rounds, the black face of it with the spider logo wears off, and you can't tell anyway. These days, I have to look real carefully to see which one's which. The center of the spider logo is still there because the bolt has the opening, right? And it wore off everywhere else, but it didn't wear off that little centerpiece. And just general wear and tear has eaten it up most of the way, but you can still see it a little bit. So what else we got? Triggers. You can spend $300-$400 on a high-end trigger, or you can go with a mil-spec trigger that came with your lower parts kit. If you are just doing a general purpose plinking rifle, the mil-spec's fine. If you want to upgrade, my opinion is the LaRue trigger is the next step. I think that there is nothing in between basically free and the $100 LaRue trigger. It's $100 now, $99. It's worthwhile. There's slight upgrades. They're a little better, but either the mil-spec is going to be good enough or you need a significant quality improvement. And to me, the LaRue is that next step. Now, to me, my opinion, just my opinion, and I'm not saying that this is the only valid opinion, the LaRue is the ultimate general purpose trigger. If you need a different trigger, you have very specific needs, and you're going to go shopping for a trigger that meets those specific needs. One of the specific Geisley triggers, a specific Timney trigger. You're going to know that I want this this pull weight with this kind of reset with, this shape. You're not going to be just going, I need a good trigger for my AR. Okay. You're competing in some format where you have, you're building a DMR rig or something. You have a specific need you can articulate where you need something different, because otherwise do the LaRue or do the mil-spec. This is similar to something that Ian McCollum on Forgotten Weapons talked about the other day. If you can't articulate a particular need, why you want a different handgun, a different carry, self-defense handgun, general purpose pistol, the answer is Glock 19. If you can't tell me what feature makes a different model better for you, then why are you getting something other than the Glock 19? It is the cheapest option that fits the widest range of people, has the most accessory options, is going to do the job. If you can articulate a particular desire or feature that you want, that for whatever reason, it could just be you want it, no need, just one, then yeah, steer this way, steer that way. But until you can do that, if you are a beginner or you don't have a specific need, that's the answer. And to me, the LaRue trigger is that default answer. Now, let's talk the difference between buying durability and reliability versus cool and specialized. Because you'll have brands like Bravo Company, Daniel Defense, Knight's Armament, um, where they're expensive and they don't appear to be anything special. Like there's nothing about that you're like, that's got this feature and this feature and this thing, and it's super light and this and that. They're not. They are, generally speaking, very mainstream, normal setups, but they're very high quality, very well tested, very reliable. And you're paying for that. You're paying for the fact that they have torture tested their chosen setups, their chosen components. They are not going, well, we'll just outsource this bolt is, we can make the most money on, and we'll get this rail cheap this year, and these barrels, and we'll just throw it all together. That's you're not paying for that. That's PSA to some extent. It's not exactly how they do it, but if you're not doing PSA, if you want something where you can spend the money and know this is going to be a very reliable piece of equipment, that's going to cost you more money. If you buy a PSA and you test it and it is perfectly reliable, you're not having any issues, great. But your odds of that happening are lower than if you spent twice as much money, almost 3 times as much money, right, for a BCM. But if you're talking, this is going to be your only AR ever, or your primary weapon, right? This is your main weapon. What's it worth? What is that worth to you? When I look at my primary ARs, they have the core components are not always premium brands, but they're a step up. I use a lot of inexpensive components, not usually dirt cheap, but inexpensive stuff in places where it doesn't matter. If item X fails, whatever, I don't care. It's on an upper that I don't care if it fails. It's a range toy. It's a piece that, whatever, I don't care. On the parts that I care about, on the setups I care about, I've spent the money for the most reliability without getting specialized, without going exotic. I don't go buy that titanium lightweight skeletonized bolt. I don't go get titanium firing pins. I don't have the super fancy rail. I'm not chasing the latest and greatest pistol grip or stock. That isn't important to me over the quality and reliability. That's why my ARs always look a little out of date, like a decade out of date. But you got to prioritize that. And I mean, I literally talked to somebody the other day about this. The Instagram photo for a lot of this stuff gets taken, and then a lot of the cool shit comes right off, and they go back to their normal setup. Because a lot of the cool shit isn't so practical. It weighs the rifle down. It is more awkward. It's more things to snag on something. Simple works, and reliable is important. Those are more important than what it looks like and who made it. So yeah, quality does matter, but you got to figure out where those key points are. If you are building an AR from scratch, assembling, not really building, but assembling, figure out those key points and make sure they're good. A decent receiver set. Don't buy junk. No Anderson, please. Arrow precision as a starting point is always good. Buy a completed rifle from Smith & Wesson. If it doesn't matter, if it comes in and has problems, if you don't care, make sure I don't have any comments or questions. Okay. If you don't care, if it's not a crisis, if it has a problem, in the first 1,000 rounds, sure, do a PSA, save half your money, put a better optic on it. If you find out later that, hey, if the accuracy is so-so, replace the barrel. decide how much accuracy you're willing to pay for and replace that barrel. Thank you for the thumbs up. I'm not sure who did that because I can't see, but somebody did. Thank you. If you have a problem with your rail, if you don't like it, it's wobbly or something, replace it. But the core functionality needs to be there. And I'm not anti-PSA. I think that PSA has done a wonderful service to the firearms industry because it gives people a chance to get an AR that is realistically probably going to work. Like, if say their failure rate is 5%, which is probably way high, that's still 95% good. And they stand behind the product. So it's not like, that 5% is out in the cold. So there's a lot of people who would not have bought an AR or maybe would have, bought a total piece of junk. It's an opportunity for people to buy a modern AR at a price that is pretty much unbeatable. You can look at some of the radical firearm stuff. Not a fan. I've had bad experiences with my 2 radical firearms uppers. I still use parts from them, but overall, not a fan. So yeah. You have to have a minimum quality level, but if you don't need it to be, you're not a police officer using this as a duty weapon. You're not a competitor where there's money on the line, right? You are not using this as your self-defense rifle without testing, where you're going to buy this and it's got to work. Because a PSA, you buy it, go shoot it. If 500 rounds later, you haven't had a problem with the ammo you're using, you got one that works. Great. You and most other people. It's not like they're that bad. It is just that they have a higher rate of failure than the more expensive ones. Oh, hey, I'm sorry. Yeah, if you spend twice as much money, there's better quality control most of the time. Not always. How many people reported problems with their Remingtons, with their Rugers, with their Smith & Wessons? Small percentage, but it happened. I certainly was not the norm that my Smith & Wesson ORC, MMP-15 or ORC was insanely accurate and has been extremely reliable over the years. My 15 ORC barrel is a chrome-lined 1 in 9, and it is significantly more accurate than my Bravo Company barrel. I have a stainless steel match-grade barrel from Bravo Company that perfectly within spec. I've talked to them. It is absolutely within their expected range. It's not at the worst end of it. It's not at the best end of it, but it's squarely in there. That's fine. And it's, to me, disappointing because my factory Smith & Wesson chrome-lined budget barrel is more accurate. It is what it is. It happens. But the the Bravo Company one works great. I have been very happy with that barrel overall, and it's on a build that looks very retro now because it has an old Troy Industries TRX rail. Handguard with the little holes all over it. It looks like a freaking cheese grater or something. One of these days, I'll take that rail off and do it over again. But honestly, it works. Do I think it looks stupid? Sure. But is stupid looking worth me spending $300 on a new rail? Not really. If it was my only AR, I'd probably do it because it does look stupid. That is kind of what I wanted to talk about today. So anybody got anything they want to bring up? We get into the politics of the day and how the Democrats are on the run politically and have shot themselves in the foot with all the crap they pulled over the last 5 or 6 years, and how it's all coming back. This stuff, you can't hide it anymore. The internet doesn't let you hide this stuff, and it'll keep coming back to bite you. But I'd rather not get into that. There's no point. Go watch it on the news. Is probably not showing it for the most part, but Twitter, blogs, it's out there. But what else we got? We could talk about things to think about for your first AR. I was going to do this as a separate video, but cool is nice, but practical and affordable are nicer. Like I said earlier, a lot of the fancy stuff goes on the Instagram picture and then comes off. Vertical front grips, the big ones. That was a fad that lasted like a year. They're gone. Forget it. People still post pictures with them. Nobody uses them that way. You don't do this, okay? You do this, you do this, you do this, but you're not grabbing the VFG on its own. You're grabbing the rail with the VFG as like a stop. They're dead item. But if you're going to do it the right way, why not just a little hand stop? Why not the angled foregrip from Magpul if you want to have a little more there to grab onto? But even that, honestly, I think is pointless. Just a hand stop, it's fine. It gives you an index point. Big lights or lasers. They look cool. They throw out a lot of light. They, let you use a laser in a dark room, whatever. For most of us, pointless. You need enough light to ID the target, and in a dark room, maybe blind them briefly. You know how much light you need to do that? 60 lumens. That's plenty. If you've ever turned on a 60 lumen tactical style flashlight in a dark room, yeah. If you had it pointed at a white wall directly in front of you, you saw stars. Backup sights under your scope that is not on a QD mount. What are they for? I mean, they look cute. They added weight to your rifle. They added expense to your rifle. And how are you going to use them? Are you carrying around the wrench to remove your optic? Really? Are you? Really? I don't think so. And if you are, why? If your optic's that unreliable, put the money you could have saved on not buying those backup sights into the better optic. Expensive fancy triggers on general purpose rifles. If you have a $350 Geisley trigger on a rifle that never sees competition, why? Legit question. What is the purpose of spending that much money on a trigger that is a specialized tool for competition if you're not going to use it that way? Versus $100 for the LaRue to get a cleaned up, consistent, really good feel, general purpose trigger. Just saying. Think about what you're going to use the rifle for, and then use that priority list to decide what matters on the rifle. What should you get for an optic? If it's a home defense optic and a general purpose, oh shit rifle, and go to the range and have some fun, a 6.5 to 20 Vortex, Viper HS, probably pointless. Even a 1 to 8 is probably pointless. Not bad, but you're going to leave it at the lower end most of the time. Something with very precise crosshairs, probably pointless. A decent BDC, beautiful. Something lower magnification, wonderful. A red dot, okay. I'm not anti-red dot. I think the low magnification prism sights are really pushing where you want a red dot for. Like I think that the red dot's reign in that realm is dying. And the reason is the price point on those quality prisms has come down. It used to be if you wanted one that had good field of view, good eye relief, and was reliable, you kind of had to spend ACOG money. And now they're down in the $200 to $300 range. Is it as good as the $1,000 ACOG, even the $800 ACOG? No. But for most people, it's more than good enough. It's not going to be the weak link. And if your gun doesn't absolutely have to function, this is not a go-to-war rifle. What are the consequences of failure? If you have an optic that, yeah, if you run it over with a truck, it might break. If you throw it down the stairs, it might have a problem. Might, not will, just might. Is that okay? Because if the answer is yes, now there's no point in spending the money on the higher end optic for durability so much as I like the look, I like the optical clarity, I like the reticle, I like the brand recognition, the warranty, whatever it is. But don't buy the durability if you don't need the durability. And again, I go back to the primary arm stuff. Most of it is extremely durable. It's just not marine proof, I guess would be a good way to put it, right? If you go out of your way, you can break it. Whereas an ACOG, you pretty much have to shoot it. Really, an ACOG is almost indestructible, short of physically destroying it, where you've broken the glass. And a good aim point is the same way. But we don't all need those on all of the rifles. Your go-to rifle, your main oh shit rifle, maybe you spend the money. I'll be honest, I chose not to. My go-to rifles, I've got the 2X on that one, and I've got Primary Arms Advanced Red Dot, Micro Dot with the buttons on my other one. I have beaten the hell out of them. Well, not the 2X so much, but the Micro Dot, no problems. Freezing cold, hot, banging around in my car, banging around in a safe. I have not been gentle to it and has held up just fine. So other people have been very abusive to them, held up just fine. I have not found the need to spend 3 times the money for more durability. If I routinely bet my life on that setup, I would. Not because I thought this would fail, but because it's just like having insurance. Say there's in a bad situation, there's a 0.1% chance that my optic could fail if I slam it into a door frame, right? Or if I take a dive behind furniture, somebody's shooting at me, right? 0.1%, tenth of a percent. But if I'm doing that, not on a regular basis, right? But like this happens to me monthly. I'm a SWAT cop. I'm a patrol officer where it's getting banged around in my vehicle all the time. You're a soldier. This is a constant thing. You're constantly banging it into things. Yes, that 0.1% starts adding up until you're going, well, the odds of it failing within this year are pretty damn good. Let me get the one that's 10 times more reliable. It's still only a tiny bit more reliable, actually, right? But it's 10 times more reliable because your tiny little chance of failure is now 10 times less likely. You went to 0.01% chance. Now I'm a little more comfy with that. It's like insurance, right? Did it cost me a bunch of money? Yes. Was it worth it in that position? Yes. And those are the choices you have to make. I think that a lot of people go too heavy. I think that a lighter barrel, a lighter rail, worth every penny. I would worry less about your stock, your pistol grip, your receiver set, and more about your barrel choice. a longer, heavier barrel, a government profile barrel. These are things that have an intended function. If you don't need them, why are you using them? I would say default to a pencil barrel and then tell me why you need something else. Because if you can't give me a good reason why you need a heavier barrel or a barrel with more weight out front, you're hurting yourself by taking it. Now you could say, get strong, go to the gym, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to tell you, why would you give yourself a disadvantage? Just because you can use something, like does the professional track star, like does Usain Bolt wear concrete shoes, or does he get the lightest, best running shoes he can get? Like, why would you handicap yourself? Yes, go to the gym. Yes, get stronger. Yes, go to the range of practice. But at the same time, your equipment can be better or worse for an intended function. Now, if you answered that, hey, I routinely do mag dumps. I routinely expect this rifle to be able to fire, 50 rounds over the course of 15, 20 minutes and retain the exact same group size or within a small window. Okay, now you need a midweight or even heavy barrel. If you're doing those mag dumps, maybe you need a government profile, maybe not. I personally, I don't think the government profile has much value in civilian use. I think it is the worst combination. Um, you lose the heat absorption where you most want it, closer to the chamber. um, and you added weight further out so that now as the barrel heats up, it's more likely to change your zero. I don't see the advantage. Um, but there are advantages to other barrel profiles. And if you don't have one of those needs, if that is not something you need, default back to the lightest possible option. Um, I did a test, and other people have done the same test in various forms with the fax and pencil barrel because it modernized that concept. The pencil barrel used to be, as it heated up, the group size moved, like the group physically moved in various directions, right? And it grew massively. My test showed, and other people have done the same, that yes, the group got bigger, but it stayed in the same place. And it didn't get so big that for the intended function of that barrel, it was too big. That's key. It is not a match grade barrel. It is not intended to be a precision barrel. It is a general purpose barrel. So as long as that barrel is good enough, even when hot, what do I care? Why wouldn't I take the lighter barrel? Um, my testing showed that it stayed within several minutes of angle with decent ammo, even when literally burning hot. It was smoking, literally. It was ridiculous. I couldn't even touch the handguards with gloves on. I needed like asbestos gloves or something. And I still have scorch marks on my wrist from that. And if you can get away with that, take it. It's an affordable, reasonable barrel at a good length, 16.1 or something inches, so you're legal. Industry standard, like there's nothing weird about it. It is perfectly accurate. Is it the most accurate barrel I own? Absolutely not. Is it accurate enough for the intended function? Absolutely. Is it still the barrel sitting in here? Yes. Can you? Yeah, you can kind of see that. You can see right about in here, it flares out. You put the gas block on, and then it flares back down. And I mean, you see my thumb, right? I mean, it is narrower than my thumb by a good margin. I mean, you can see it flares out for the muzzle device. And that rifle is a joy to shoot. It's very light and handy. It is extremely, if you hand it to most women who have, shot other ARs, the first thing they say is, "Oh, wow." Okay. Like it's the difference between them liking it and them just tolerating it. Now, if you hand it to a woman that does competition shooting, she's going to go, "Well, the recoil management of this is going to suck." And she's right. Um, with the muzzle brake I've got on it, recoil management is not superb. It is designed to have a suppressor on it. And with the suppressor, recoil management is perfectly good. But without it, yeah, it has some muzzle rise. It's still a 223. It's still an AR. It's not bad. But if you're competing and you're trying to stay flat, it's not that built. You need something with a little more mass and a different muzzle rise. But in terms of their ability for a non-super athletic, for an average normal woman to hold that up accurately and shoot offhand, much happier. And I mean, I've done this with multiple women. They've all gone, "That is so much nicer." You hand them a different one, they're like, it's muzzle heavy. They don't have the arm length and the arm strength that the average guy does. It's just a fact of life. The average woman does not have the upper body strength and reach that we do. That makes a huge difference because if you have a bunch of weight out at the end of that barrel, if your barrel is longer, if your barrel is heavier, if your handguard is longer and heavier, that puts the weight further from their body and it is awkward. With a lighter setup, most of the weight is a little closer to their body. It's more balanced for them. They like it better. I do the same thing when I sell crossbows. If I can put a Raven R26 in a woman's hands and she doesn't have sticker shock, most likely she's going to buy it if she's in the market for a crossbow. If she and her husband are in looking for crossbows and they want to buy one crossbow and they're looking at various models and I can get that in her hands, that's probably what they're buying because it's too tight for him. It's cramped for him, but he can live with it. All the other ones are too awkward for the woman. Now, obviously, there are exceptions. Women with longer arms. You have a taller than average woman with longer arms, particularly athletic women. I had a woman in the other day who has been a competitive archer, shooting on teams and everything, for years and years and years, decades. And no, she's not going to have any problems. She was not particularly tall, but she was a very tough individual. She was physically a very capable individual, more than average. On the other hand, it's very rare that I would have a male come in and not be able to handle most of the crossbows that I sell. Doesn't mean it's ideal, but it's not a real problem. The same thing is true with the ARs. You could have a relatively awkward, heavy, muzzle heavy AR, and for most men, it's not going to be a problem. It may not be ideal. They may prefer something else, but we're not going to be handicapped significantly. But my question is, why take the handicap at all? Why? What did I gain? In my case, I specifically wanted the super light setup for the muzzle and the barrel and everything, because if I put the suppressor on it, I then added most of that weight back. Whereas if I started out already heavy, my other standard ARs, and you add the suppressor, whoa, now it's muzzle heavy. Now you're swinging between targets and inertia takes effect. And you can't pause on target. You have to shoot as you go by. Well, if I want to put 2 or 3 rounds on a plate as I swing by, that's not happening, right? I got to pause and get those shots and then go to the next target. It takes longer to stop. It takes longer to get it moving. I mean, you can run the numbers. Math doesn't lie. Physics don't lie. It is what it is. If you can run that course at one time with a much more heavy, muzzle heavy rifle, if you take one that's lighter, handier, faster, which is why they call them that, your scores are going to be faster. Your times are going to be better. You don't have to adapt. You don't have to get used to it, But once you do, it's going to be better. This is not like a handgun where recoil is such an issue in terms of speed, where a heavier handgun can be better. It's very, very rare that in a light caliber like 223, the rifle weight is a benefit. The balance can be a benefit, but it isn't the mass usually, unless you're talking heat absorption in a barrel. And keep in mind, heat absorption in a barrel is a two-way street. That fax and pencil barrel heats up quick, cools down quick too. If you heat up a chunk of steel that weighs 3 times as much, one of the big H-bar barrels, it takes a while to cool down once you get it hot. You get more rounds before it gets hot. But yeah. And also in terms of wear and tear, keep in mind what wear and tear is on a barrel when you fire a lot of rounds quickly. It has absolutely nothing to do with the surface temperature of that barrel. Nothing at all. It has to do with the throat temperature. Did you get that throat hot? Keep it hot and keep shooting and erode that metal. And, well, I'm going to tell you right now, there's not a hell of a lot of difference between any of the barrels. Barrel materials, barrel coatings, what ammo you use, your rate of fire, those have a much bigger play than is there more metal in front of that point to soak up heat. Because you're talking a pinpoint source right there. It's not like the H-bar has a lot of metal closer to that spot. They all have roughly the same. They're all about the same size at the chamber. Now, I'm not saying there's no benefit because the heat does travel down the barrel but relatively speaking, if I do a mag dump, the wear and tear between the two is going to be really similar. Just saying, you're adding a lot of weight for questionable returns, right? If you're doing repeated mag dumps, my solution is buy cheap barrels. Just buy cheap barrels, wear them out, replace them. Don't cry over an expensive barrel because no matter what you buy, you're going to wear it out. It doesn't take too many mag dumps to eat a barrel in terms of its performance. Does it still work? Sure. But you've now degraded the accuracy significantly. That's the other thing you hear a lot of people talk about, particularly on like 6.5 Grendel, 6.5 Creedmoor, 6mm arc, that, you only get so many shots before the barrel's done. And then they're talking about hunting. And I'm like, why do you need a half minute of angle hunting? Why do you care that it's now 0.6 minute of angle? Like that, what did that do to you? How did that change your hunting? Did you really have a scope that was that precise? Did you really have ammo that precise in your hunting stuff? Really? Bullshit. I mean, like no joke. Bullshit. Your hunting ammo is not that perfect. Your hunting conditions are not that perfect. The animal breathes and moves more than that. Okay. So who cares? What does it matter? Your shot out barrel has 3 or 4 times that number of shots left. Now, the guy competing who's got to hit a little tiny steel plate at 500 yards, and yeah, he may hit it by a quarter of an inch. He cares. The guy doing bench press work, where they're measuring group size, he cares. That matters to him. But it doesn't matter if it doesn't matter, right? It only matters if it matters. And for most people, a barrel needs to be way past the point where officially it is worn out. It needs to be to the point where, okay, now we're at the limit of my ammunition. Because, for example, if you're firing mil-spec ammo, well, you know what the ratings are for mil-spec, like the standards are for mil-spec for ammo? Lousy. If you're talking like M193, 855, even 855A1, any of the normal stuff, the accuracy requirements for that stuff is shit. It is minute of man, okay? And that's good enough. That's perfectly fine for the intended function, right? But guess what? Your barrel has to be practically melted before it's going to be less accurate because of wear than the ammo. You are not going to see the difference between your slightly worn in barrel, a very worn barrel, and a holy shit worn out barrel if that's what you're shooting. You're not going to notice it until the throat is so eroded the bullet is basically rattling its way into the rifling. It just is, because the ammo was never more accurate than that. It just wasn't. Now, if you're firing Black Hills, premium ammo, or something else similar to that, precision hand loads, okay, yeah. If you were getting half minute of angle consistently, that was your actual result, and now you're getting 0.75, and you're like, well, yeah, the barrel is now worn out for my purposes. For somebody else, they're going, I never saw 0.75 in my life, right? I have my Bravo company stainless steel barrel has never shot better than 0.75. Has never done it. It's got thousands and thousands of rounds through it. It still shoots 0.75, but it's never shot better. I'm not going to consider that barrel. It's a stainless steel, so it's going to last a while, and I don't do high rate of fire stuff with that setup. But until it gets to like 1.25 even, I don't care. It's still accurate enough for the tasks I use it for. When it gets to that point, yeah, pull the barrel off, get a new one. Not going to cry about it. More than got its life out of it, right? But on the other hand, my ORC barrel from Smith & Wesson is half minute of angle. I've literally gotten 0.47. Hand loads, perfect conditions, but I did it, it was multiple groups on different days. These are 5-shot groups or even 10-shot groups in a couple cases. I don't think I ever had 0.47 on 10 shots. I think that was the best I got on a 10-shot group was 0.52. But yeah, that's an outstanding barrel. I will be very sad when that barrel can no longer do that and is now 0.75. Is it still a supremely accurate barrel? Absolutely. Am I going to retire it when it gets to that point? Hell no. Because my odds of getting something better than that, despite spending, say, $1,000 on a barrel, low. I can buy a really good barrel, hope for the best, and still not get better than that barrel is when it would officially be considered worn out, because the group size has increased by 25%, by 50%. The group size has gone up 50%, right? If we're saying we're at 0.75. By any normal standard, that's a shot out barrel. It's still better than almost everything else out there, right? I freely admit I got stupid lucky on that barrel. So that is it. We are over an hour. Nobody has posted any comments or questions. If whoever is watching has anything they want to talk about, let's do it. I got time tonight. I don't have anywhere I have to be. I've already filmed my video for Saturday. I just got to do some editing, which I need to do tonight or tomorrow morning. And we actually ended up covering a topic and a half, so I don't have another video for Monday to do for Tuesday. I'm gonna have to come up with something. But oh well. Okay. So apparently, whoever is watching does not have any questions. We are going to call it a night. Thank you very much. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. Keep shooting. And I'm going to guess that most of my audience is finding the current political situation and media frenzy amusing, even while we continue to worry about what will happen. But there's a certain humor and irony in seeing some of this stuff come back and bite people. Because everybody with a brain, with their eyes open, we're going, really? Really? And now it's come full circle and we don't look like we're crazy. People aren't calling us lunatics. So, bye guys.